The days that followed felt like a strange mix of normalcy and tension. Ethan tried to act as though everything was fine, but it was hard to ignore the weight of what he knew. The coded message about unusual activity near Maplewood weighed heavily on his mind. Every time he saw Aisha or Mia, he felt a pang of guilt for not telling them the full truth. Yet at the same time, he couldn't bring himself to share it. How could he explain that aliens might be lurking just outside their small town? That the peaceful life they all took for granted could be shattered in an instant? Aisha noticed something was off with Ethan. He seemed distracted, quieter than usual. When she asked him about it during one of their conversations, he brushed it off with a vague excuse about being tired from schoolwork. But deep down, Aisha wasn't convinced. She had always been observant, and Ethan's behavior didn't add up. Still, she decided not to push him. If he wanted to talk, she figured he would when he was ready. Mia, on the other hand, wasn't so patient. Her curiosity only grew stronger after their conversation in the hallway. She spent hours researching UFO sightings in the area, scrolling through forums and news articles online. Some of the stories were wild and clearly exaggerated, but others sounded eerily plausible. One report mentioned strange lights hovering over the forest near Maplewood, a detail that matched what her dad had described seeing just days earlier. Determined to get answers, Mia cornered Ethan after class one afternoon. "Okay, spill it," she said, crossing her arms. "What's really going on?" Ethan froze, caught off guard by her directness. "What do you mean?" he asked, stalling for time. "Don't play dumb," Mia replied, narrowing her eyes. "You've been acting weird ever since you asked me about those lights, and don't think I haven't noticed how jumpy you get whenever someone mentions aliens." Ethan sighed, running a hand through his hair. He glanced around to make sure no one else was listening before leaning closer. "Look, I can't tell you everything right now, but trust me, it's serious. Just promise me you'll stay safe, okay? Don't go wandering into the woods alone, especially at night." Mia stared at him, her expression unreadable. For a moment she considered pressing further, but something in his tone stopped her. He wasn't joking or exaggerating. He genuinely seemed worried. "Fine," she said finally, "but you owe me an explanation sooner rather than later." That weekend, Aisha invited Mia and Ethan to her house to work on a group project for science class. Her mom greeted them warmly, offering snacks and drinks before heading upstairs to give them space. The three friends spread out in the living room, surrounded by books, papers, and laptops. As they worked, the conversation eventually drifted away from schoolwork. Aisha brought up the topic of stars and galaxies, her passion shining through as she explained the basics of astrophysics to Mia, who listened intently despite knowing little about the subject. Ethan chimed in occasionally, sharing interesting facts that impressed even Aisha. "You know a lot about space," Aisha commented, smiling at him. "Do you want to be an astronomer or something?" Ethan hesitated, unsure how to respond. "Not exactly," he said carefully, "but I've always been interested in exploring the unknown." His vague answer piqued Mia's interest. "Exploring the unknown, huh?" she teased, raising an eyebrow. "Care to elaborate?" Before Ethan could reply, the sound of breaking glass startled all three of them. They turned toward the window, just in time to see a bright flash streak across the sky, followed by a loud boom that rattled the house. "What was that?" Aisha gasped, clutching her chest. "No idea," Ethan muttered, already moving toward the door. "Stay here, I'm going to check it out." "Are you crazy?" Mia exclaimed, grabbing his arm. "It could be dangerous." "I'll be careful," Ethan promised, pulling away gently. "Just stay inside, okay?" Reluctantly, Mia and Aisha watched as Ethan slipped out the front door and disappeared into the night. The air was cool, and the streets were eerily quiet. Ethan moved quickly, following the direction of the light until he reached the edge of the forest. There, partially hidden among the trees, was a crater smoking faintly. In the center lay a metallic object, its surface shimmering faintly under the moonlight. Ethan approached cautiously, his heart pounding. Up close, the object looked like nothing he'd ever seen before, smooth and seamless, with intricate patterns etched into its surface. It pulsed faintly, as if alive. As he studied it, He realized it wasn't debris from a meteor. It was a piece of alien technology. Suddenly, a low hum filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. Ethan spun around, searching for the source. From the shadows emerged figures unlike anything human. They were tall and slender, their skin a pale grayish blue. Their eyes glowed faintly, and their movements were unnervingly fluid. One of them raised a hand pointing directly at Ethan. Without thinking, Ethan activated a device strapped to his wrist, a compact gadget designed to emit a high-frequency signal capable of disorienting extraterrestrials. The aliens recoiled, their glowing eyes flickering as the sound waves hit them. Seizing the opportunity, Ethan grabbed the metallic object and sprinted back toward Aisha's house. When he burst through the door, Mia and Aisha stared at him in shock. "We need to leave. Now," Ethan said urgently, holding up the object. "This isn't safe anymore." "Wait, what is that?" Aisha asked, her voice trembling. "There's no time to explain," Ethan replied, grabbing their hands. "Just trust me." The three of them ran outside, heading straight for Ethan's car. As they sped away, the forest behind them lit up with blinding flashes of light. Whatever those aliens were planning, Ethan had disrupted it. For now. Later that night, they regrouped at Ethan's house. His parents were out of town, leaving the place empty. Sitting in the dimly lit living room, Ethan finally told them the truth, or at least part of it. He explained that he was part of a secret organization tasked with monitoring extraterrestrial activity. The object they'd retrieved was evidence of a potential threat, and the aliens wouldn't stop until they got it back. Aisha and Mia listened in stunned silence, their minds struggling to process what they'd just heard. "So, you're like a guardian or something?" Mia asked slowly. "Something like that," Ethan admitted. "But I can't do this alone. I need your help." Aisha nodded firmly. "Then we'll help you, together." Mia grinned, cracking her knuckles. "Aliens versus humans? Bring it on." For the first time in days, Ethan felt a glimmer of hope. He still didn't know what lay ahead, but with Aisha and Mia by his side, he believed they stood a chance. Little did they realize, their journey was only beginning, and the stakes were higher than any of them could have imagined. The next day at Maplewood High felt different, though no one could quite put their finger on why. The air seemed charged, as if the events of the previous afternoon had left an invisible mark on the school. Aisha Johnson walked through the hallways, with her head held a little higher than usual. She wasn't sure if it was because Kyle Carter and his friends were avoiding her gaze, or because of what Ethan Brooks had done for her. Either way, she felt lighter, like a weight she hadn't even realized she'd been carrying had been lifted. Ethan, on the other hand, tried to act as though nothing unusual had happened. He sat alone during lunch, just like always, sketching in his notebook, but every now and then his eyes would flicker toward Aisha's table. He noticed that she wasn't alone today. A girl named Mia Lopez had joined her, and they were talking, animatedly. Ethan didn't know Mia well. She was captain of the debate team and known for being outspoken, but he admired how confident she seemed. There was something about the way she carried herself that made people listen, even when they didn't want to. Mia had seen the whole thing the day before. Like everyone else, she'd been shocked when Ethan stepped in to defend Aisha. But unlike most students who quickly forgot about such incidents once the excitement wore off, Mia couldn't stop thinking about it. Something about Ethan's calm demeanor intrigued her. He didn't yell or throw punches like someone might expect in a situation like that. Instead, he simply stood there, unshaken, as if he knew exactly what he was doing. It made her curious. After lunch, Mia approached Aisha near the lockers. "Hey," she said with a warm smile. "Can I talk to you for a second?" Aisha nodded, closing her locker door. "Sure. I just wanted to say, I thought what Ethan did yesterday was really brave," Mia began. "Not many people would have stood up to Kyle like that." Aisha smiled faintly. "Yeah, I know, I still can't believe he did it. He barely knows me." "Maybe that's why," Mia suggested. "Sometimes people step up because it's the right thing to do, not because they're looking for anything in return." Aisha thought about that for a moment. I guess so, but I still feel like I should thank him properly. Mia tilted her head, her dark ponytail swaying slightly. Well, maybe we both should. He deserves some recognition, don't you think? Aisha hesitated. What do you mean? I mean, let's go talk to him, Mia said firmly. Let's find out more about this mysterious guy who decided to take on Kyle Carter. Later that afternoon, after the final bell rang, Aisha and Mia found Ethan sitting on a bench outside the school. He was absorbed in his sketchbook, his pencil moving steadily across the page. Neither girl had seen his drawings up close before, but they could tell he was talented. The lines were clean and precise, forming shapes that looked almost otherworldly. Hey, Ethan, Mia called out as they approached. Her voice startled him slightly, and he looked up, blinking against the sunlight. Oh, hey, he replied, closing his sketchbook quickly. What's up? We just wanted to say thanks, Aisha said, stepping forward. For what you did yesterday. You didn't have to, but you did anyway. Ethan shrugged, looking uncomfortable. It wasn't a big deal. Anyone would have done the same. No, they wouldn't, Mia countered, crossing her arms. Most people would have stayed quiet, including me. So cut the modesty, okay? You stood up to Kyle Carter, and that's not something you see every day. Ethan chuckled softly, running a hand through his hair. I guess I just don't like bullies. Well, we appreciate it, Aisha added. And we were wondering, do you want to hang out sometime? Maybe grab coffee or something? Ethan blinked, clearly taken aback by the invitation. For a moment he didn't respond. Then he glanced at Mia, who was giving him an encouraging nod, and back at Aisha, whose hopeful expression softened his resolve. Sure, he said finally. That sounds nice. Great, Mia exclaimed, clapping her hands together. How about tomorrow after school? There's a cafe downtown that makes amazing hot chocolate. Ethan nodded slowly. Okay, tomorrow works. As the girls walked away, chatting excitedly about their plans, Ethan watched them go, a mix of emotions swirling inside him. Part of him was glad they'd reached out. He hadn't expected to make friends so quickly, but another part of him felt uneasy. Making connections meant risking exposure, and Ethan had secrets he couldn't afford to share. Secrets that went far beyond being a new student. That night, Ethan lay awake in his room, staring at the ceiling. His mind raced with thoughts of the day's events. He replayed the conversation with Aisha and Mia over and over again, analyzing every word. They seemed genuine, kind even, but he couldn't shake the feeling that getting close to them might put them in danger. His communicator buzzed softly on the nightstand, pulling him from his thoughts. Sighing, he reached for it and activated the screen. A message appeared, written in code. Unusual activity detected near Maplewood. Possible alien presence. Proceed with caution. Ethan's heart sank. He'd suspected something like this might happen eventually. His mission in Maplewood wasn't random. He'd been sent here to monitor potential extraterrestrial threats. So far, everything had been quiet, almost suspiciously so. But now, it seemed his instincts had been right, all along. He opened his laptop and pulled up satellite images of the area surrounding the town. Sure enough, there were anomalies, strange heat signatures and patterns that didn't match anything natural. Ethan zoomed in on a dense patch of forest just outside Maplewood. The data suggested recent disturbances, possibly caused by advanced technology. Closing the laptop, Ethan leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. This was exactly what he'd feared. If aliens were indeed planning something, Maplewood High could become a target. And if that happened, he wouldn't be able to protect everyone, not alone. The next morning, Ethan arrived at school earlier than usual. He needed time to think, to figure out his next move. As he walked through the empty halls, he spotted Mia unlocking her locker. She looked up and smiled when she saw him. Morning, she said brightly. Ready for coffee later? Ethan forced a smile. Yeah, definitely. Actually, there's something I need to ask you first. Mia raised an eyebrow. Oh? What is it? It's kind of weird, Ethan admitted, lowering his voice. But have you noticed anything strange happening around town lately? Like lights in the sky or animals acting oddly? Mia frowned, tilting her head. Now that you mention it, my dad said he saw some weird lights last week. He thought it was just a drone or something, but what? Ethan pressed. But it moved too fast, Mia finished. And it didn't make any noise. Why are you asking? Ethan hesitated. He didn't want to scare her, but he also couldn't lie. Not completely. I've been hearing rumors, he said carefully, about UFO sightings. I'm just trying to figure out if there's any truth to them. Mia studied him for a moment, her sharp eyes narrowing slightly. You're not just curious, are you? There's something else going on, isn't there? Ethan sighed. He should have known better than to try fooling someone like Mia. Look, I can't explain everything right now, but trust me, it's important. If you hear anything else, or see anything unusual, let me know, okay? Mia nodded slowly. All right. But you owe me an explanation eventually. Deal, Ethan said, relief washing over him. Later that afternoon, Aisha and Mia met Ethan at the cafe as planned. The three of them sat at a small table by the window, sipping hot chocolate, and talking about everything from school projects to favorite movies. For a while, Ethan forgot about the looming threat and allowed himself to enjoy the moment. These girls were easy to talk to, and their laughter was contagious. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the streets, Ethan's mind drifted back to the message on his communicator. Whatever was coming, it was closer than ever. And whether he liked it or not, Aisha and Mia were already involved. Little did they know, their lives were about to change forever. In the small town of Maplewood, life moved at a steady pace. The streets were lined with tall oak trees, their leaves rustling softly in the breeze. It was a place where everyone knew each other, and for the most part, things stayed peaceful. But like any town, Maplewood had its share of challenges, especially within the walls of Maplewood High School. Isha Johnson sat at her usual spot in the cafeteria, a quiet corner near the windows. She liked this spot because it gave her a perfect view of the schoolyard outside. Aisha wasn't one to draw attention to herself. She preferred books over loud conversations, and often spent her lunch breaks reading or sketching ideas for her science projects. Today, she was flipping through the pages of an astronomy book, dreaming about stars and galaxies far beyond Earth. Her dream was to become an astrophysicist someday, to explore the mysteries of the universe and inspire others, to look up at the night sky with wonder. But today, her quiet moment wouldn't last long. Across the room, Kyle Carter was watching her. Kyle was the kind of person who thrived on chaos. He wasn't particularly smart or talented, but he had a knack for making others feel small. His favorite pastime was finding someone weaker than him and picking on them until they either cried or ran away. And today his target was Aisha. Kyle nudged his friends, two boys named Ryan and Chris, who always followed him around like shadows. Watch this, Kyle said with a smirk, standing up from his seat. He grabbed a half-eaten sandwich from his tray and tossed it carelessly onto the floor as he walked toward Aisha's table. Ryan and Chris snickered behind him, already anticipating the drama that was about to unfold. Aisha looked up just as Kyle approached. Her heart sank when she saw the familiar sneer on his face. She didn't say anything, though. Instead, she closed her book slowly, trying to prepare herself for whatever was coming next. Kyle stopped right in front of her, blocking her view of the window. What are you reading, huh? Kyle asked, his tone dripping with mockery. Before Aisha could answer, he reached out and snatched the book from her hands. Oh, look at this, he said loudly, holding it up for everyone to see. The wonders of the universe. Oh, how boring is that? Who even cares about space? Aisha felt her cheeks grow warm. She wanted to grab the book back, but she knew better than to try. Kyle was bigger than her, and besides, there were too many people watching now. Some students turned away, pretending not to notice, while others whispered quietly among themselves. No one dared to step in, not when Kyle was involved. Give it back, Aisha said softly, her voice barely audible over the hum of the cafeteria. Kyle pretended not to hear her. Instead, he flipped through the pages dramatically, tearing one out and crumpling it into a ball. "Oops," he said with fake innocence. "Looks like your precious book got ruined." Aisha clenched her fists under the table, trying to stay calm. She hated confrontations, but she also hated feeling powerless. Just as she opened her mouth to speak again, Kyle leaned closer, his grin widening. "You know what else is ruined?" he asked, pointing at her hair. "That thing on your head. What is that anyway? Did you forget to comb it this morning?" The cafeteria fell silent. Everyone seemed to hold their breath, waiting to see how Aisha would react. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them away quickly. She wouldn't give Kyle the satisfaction of seeing her cry. Still, she didn't know what to do. Standing up to him felt impossible, but sitting there silently felt just as bad. Unbeknownst to Aisha, someone else was watching the scene unfold. Ethan Brooks was new to Maplewood High. He'd transferred just 2 weeks ago and hadn't made many friends. Yet, Ethan kept to himself most of the time, preferring to observe rather than participate. During lunch, he usually sat alone, sketching in his notebook or reading quietly. But today, something about what was happening caught his attention. Ethan glanced up from his drawing and saw Kyle towering over Aisha. At first, he thought maybe it was just playful teasing. Kids sometimes joked around like that. But the longer he watched, the more obvious it became that this wasn't harmless fun. Kyle's words were sharp and cruel, designed to hurt. And Aisha, though she tried to hide it, looked like she was shrinking under his gaze. Ethan hesitated. He didn't know Aisha well, and stepping in meant putting himself in the spotlight, something he avoided whenever possible. But he couldn't ignore the knot forming in his stomach. Something inside him stirred, urging him to act. Slowly, he set his pencil down and stood up from his seat. As Ethan walked toward the commotion, a few heads turned in his direction. Most people recognized him as the quiet transfer student, so his sudden movement drew curious stares. When he reached Aisha's table, he stopped a few feet away, his expression unreadable. "Is there a problem here?" Ethan asked, his voice calm but firm. Kyle turned to face him, his smirk faltering slightly. "Who invited you?" he snapped, clearly annoyed by the interruption. "No one," Ethan replied evenly, "but it looks like there's enough trouble here already without adding another bully to the mix." A murmur rippled through the crowd. People weren't used to hearing someone talk back to Kyle like that. Even Aisha looked surprised, though she didn't say anything. She simply stared at Ethan, unsure of what to make of him. Kyle narrowed his eyes, studying Ethan carefully. There was something different about this guy. Something Kyle couldn't quite put his finger on. For a moment he considered backing off. After all, Ethan didn't seem like the type to back down easily. But pride got the better of him. Kyle stepped closer, his chest puffed out as if to intimidate Ethan. "You think you're tough, huh?" Kyle said, his voice rising. "Why don't you mind your own business?" Ethan didn't flinch. He met Kyle's glare head-on, his posture relaxed but confident. "I am minding my own business," he said, "and what I'm seeing isn't okay." For a second it seemed like Kyle might actually listen. But then he did something unexpected. He shoved Ethan hard, expecting him to stumble backward. To everyone's surprise, Ethan barely moved. He stood rooted in place, his expression unchanged. If anything, he looked even calmer than before. Kyle froze, momentarily thrown off balance. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. People were supposed to be afraid of him, not stand their ground like this. Confusion flickered across his face, quickly replaced by anger. "What's your deal, man?" he demanded, taking another step forward. Before Kyle could do anything else, Ethan raised a hand, palm facing outward. It was a simple gesture, but it carried a strange authority. Without saying a word, Ethan's presence seemed to fill the room. The tension was palpable, and even Kyle's friends shifted uncomfortably, sensing that something was off. "I'll say it one more time," Ethan said, his tone low and steady. "Leave her alone." Kyle opened his mouth to retort, but no words came out. For reasons he couldn't explain, he suddenly felt uneasy, as if he'd stumbled into territory he didn't fully understand. After a long pause, he muttered something under his breath and stormed off, his friends trailing behind him like lost puppies. The cafeteria erupted into whispers as soon as Kyle was gone. Students exchanged glances, some impressed, others confused. Aisha sat motionless, still processing what had just happened. Slowly, she looked up at Ethan, her eyes wide with gratitude and curiosity. "Thank you," she said softly, breaking the silence. Ethan nodded, offering her a small smile. "You didn't deserve that," he replied simply. Then, without waiting for a response, he picked up her crumpled book page from the floor and handed it to her before walking away. As Ethan returned to his seat, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Little did anyone know his involvement in Aisha's life would lead to something far greater and far stranger than anyone could have imagined. The days after the water tower incident passed in a haze of exhaustion and reflection. Ethan, Aisha, and Mia returned to their daily routines at Maplewood High, but nothing felt the same. The weight of what they had experienced lingered over them like a shadow even as they tried to act normal. They laughed with classmates, attended classes, and worked on assignments, but their minds were elsewhere, always alert, always waiting for the next sign of trouble. Ethan spent most of his free time studying the alien artifact. He set up a makeshift lab in his basement, using tools provided by his organization to analyze its properties. Despite his advanced training, the object remained a mystery. Its energy signature defied explanation, and its connection to Aisha was something he couldn't fully understand. She had been the one to activate it, her touch sparking the reaction that neutralized the aliens. Why her? What made her different? Aisha, too, found herself thinking about the artifact constantly. It wasn't just curiosity. It was a pull, almost magnetic, drawing her back to it whenever she closed her eyes. At night, she dreamed of stars and galaxies, of vast expanses of space where glowing entities moved silently among the cosmos. When she woke, the images lingered, vivid and unsettling. She began sketching them in her notebook during class, filling pages with swirling patterns and strange symbols that seemed to come from nowhere. Sometimes Mia would glance over her shoulder and ask if she was okay, but Aisha didn't know how to explain what she was feeling. Mia, meanwhile, kept watch. Her sharp instincts told her the danger wasn't over, not yet. She noticed things others missed: strange cars parked near the school, unfamiliar faces lingering around town, and an unusual number of blackouts reported in the area. Each detail added to her growing sense of unease. She started carrying a flashlight in her backpack and memorizing emergency exits wherever she went. If another attack came, she wanted to be ready. One afternoon, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the three friends gathered at Ethan's house. The basement was dimly lit, the hum of equipment filling the air. On the table sat the artifact, its glow faint but steady. Ethan adjusted the settings on a scanner, frowning at the readings. "It's changing," he said finally, breaking the silence. "The energy levels are rising." "What does that mean?" Aisha asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "It means we might not have much time," Ethan replied. "Whatever this thing is, it's building towards something. And I don't think it'll stop until it reaches its peak." Mia crossed her arms, her expression grim. "So what's the plan? Do we try to destroy it?" "We can't," Ethan admitted, "not without risking catastrophic consequences. This isn't just some random piece of tech. It's tied to something bigger, something cosmic." Aisha stepped closer to the artifact, her hand hovering above its surface. "What if it's trying to communicate?" she suggested softly. "Maybe it's not just a weapon or a key. Maybe it's alive." The room fell silent as her words sank in. Alive? It sounded impossible, yet none of them could deny the strange pull they all felt when near it. Ethan exchanged a glance with Mia, who shrugged. "If anyone can figure it out, it's you," she said, nodding at Aisha. Taking a deep breath, Aisha placed her hand on the artifact, Immediately, the glow intensified, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Images flooded her mind, stars collapsing into black holes, planets forming from clouds of dust, civilizations rising and falling. She saw beings unlike anything human, their forms shifting and flowing like liquid light. And then, amidst the chaos, she heard a voice, not spoken aloud, but resonating within her very soul. "Help us," Aisha gasped, stumbling backward. Ethan caught her before she fell, steadying her as she blinked rapidly, trying to process what she'd seen. "What happened?" he asked urgently. "Are you okay?" "They're calling me," Aisha whispered, her voice trembling. "They need help." "Who?" Mia demanded, stepping forward. "The aliens?" "No," Aisha replied, shaking her head. "Not the ones we fought. Others. They're trapped, lost, and they want us to guide them home." For a moment, no one spoke. The implications of Aisha's revelation hung heavy in the air. If the artifact was a beacon meant to lead these beings somewhere, destroying it wasn't an option. But helping them also carried risks. Who or what were they bringing into their world? "We don't have a choice," Ethan said finally, his tone firm despite the uncertainty in his eyes. "If we don't do this, someone else will. And they might not have our best interests at heart." Mia nodded slowly. "All right, so how do we do it?" Aisha closed her eyes, focusing on the images still lingering in her mind. "We need to take it to the highest point in town, the observatory on Hillcrest Ridge. That's where the signal will be strongest." That night, under the cover of darkness, the trio set out for the observatory. Ethan drove cautiously, keeping to back roads to avoid attracting attention. The artifact rested securely in Aisha's lap, its glow casting soft shadows across the car's interior. None of them spoke. The tension was palpable, each lost in their own thoughts. When they arrived, the observatory loomed against the starry sky, its dome gleaming faintly in the moonlight. They climbed the winding path to the entrance, their footsteps crunching softly on the gravel. Inside, the air was cool and still, the massive telescope pointed toward the heavens. Aisha led the way to the control panel, her movements deliberate as she positioned the artifact beneath the open dome. As soon as she activated it, the room filled with light. Streams of energy shot upward, piercing the night sky like beams from a lighthouse. Outside, the stars seemed to shift, aligning themselves in patterns that defied logic. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the walls and floor until it felt like the entire structure was alive. And then, they appeared. At first, they were faint outlines, shimmering against the darkness. Slowly, their forms solidified, revealing beings of pure light. They hovered silently, their presence both awe-inspiring and terrifying. One of them floated closer, its gaze fixed on Aisha. "You have answered our call," it said, its voice echoing in their minds rather than their ears. "We are grateful." "What do you want from us?" Ethan asked, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "We seek passage," the being replied. "Our journey has been long, and your world lies along our path. With your guidance, we may continue safely." "And if we refuse?" Mia challenged, her arms crossed. The being tilted its head as if considering her question. "Then we must find another way. But such paths are fraught with peril, for both your kind and ours." Aisha stepped forward, her resolve strengthening. "We'll help you, but you have to promise not to harm anyone here." The being inclined its head slightly. "We mean no harm. Our quarrel is not with your people." With that, the artifact flared brightly, sending a final burst of energy skyward. The beings ascended, their forms merging with the stars until they vanished completely. The hum faded, leaving only silence in its wake. Back at Ethan's house, the three friends sat together in the living room, the artifact now inert and lifeless on the coffee table. None of them spoke for a long time, the enormity of what they'd done sinking in. They had faced the unknown and emerged victorious, not through violence, but through understanding. "I guess this means it's over," Mia said finally, breaking the silence. For now, Ethan replied, glancing at the artifact, but I doubt it's the last we'll see of them. Aisha nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. Maybe that's okay. Maybe we're ready. As they sat there, the bond between them stronger than ever, they knew one thing for certain. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. And in doing so, they had proven that even in the face of the extraordinary, humanity's greatest strength was its capacity for compassion and courage. The days following their encounter with the aliens were a blur of activity. Ethan, Aisha, and Mia spent every spare moment preparing for what might come next. They knew the aliens wouldn't give up easily, not when they had lost something so valuable. The metallic object Ethan had retrieved from the forest was now hidden in a secure compartment in his basement, its faint glow pulsing like a heartbeat. None of them fully understood what it did, but they all agreed on one thing. It was important enough to risk everything. Ethan took charge of the planning. He explained to Aisha and Mia that his organization had trained him for situations like this, though he'd never imagined he'd face such a threat in a quiet town like Maplewood. Using the tools provided by his handlers, he began setting up defenses around the house. Motion sensors, cameras, and electromagnetic barriers were installed to detect any unusual activity. It felt strange turning his home into a fortress, but Ethan knew it was necessary. Aisha threw herself into research. She scoured books and online articles about extraterrestrial life, astronomy, and advanced technology. Her knowledge of science proved invaluable as she tried to decipher the patterns etched into the alien artifact. Late at night, she would sit at Ethan's desk, her brow furrowed in concentration, jotting down notes and theories. Though she couldn't unlock the full mystery of the object, she discovered that its energy signature matched readings from unexplained phenomena reported worldwide. Mia, meanwhile, focused on strategy. Her sharp mind and quick thinking made her the perfect person to plan for every possible scenario. She created detailed maps of the surrounding area, marking potential escape routes and safe zones. She also came up with contingency plans in case things went wrong, a skill she'd honed during countless debate competitions. If we're going to fight aliens, she said with a grin, we need to be smarter than them. Despite their efforts, none of them could shake the feeling of unease that lingered over everything they did. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow outside the window sent their hearts racing. They tried to keep their fears in check, reminding themselves that they were stronger together. But the reality of their situation weighed heavily on them. This wasn't just a school project or a game, it was life or death. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the trio gathered in Ethan's living room. The atmosphere was tense, each of them lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Aisha broke the silence. Do you think they'll come tonight? Ethan hesitated before answering. I don't know, but we should assume they will. We can't let our guard down. Mia nodded, clutching a flashlight tightly. What if they're already watching us? What if they've been here the whole time? They haven't. Ethan reassured her, though his voice lacked conviction. My sensors would have picked up on it. As if on cue, the lights flickered. For a split second, the room plunged into darkness before the power returned. Aisha gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Was that? Probably just a power surge, Ethan said quickly, though his eyes darted toward the window. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, casting eerie shadows across the yard. But then it happened again. The lights flickered, followed by a low hum that seemed to vibrate through the walls. This time, the noise didn't stop. It grew louder, deeper, until it filled the entire house. Ethan sprang to his feet, grabbing a device from the table. They're here. Without another word, the three of them rushed to the basement where the alien artifact was stored. Ethan activated the electromagnetic barrier, sealing off the room. The hum intensified, vibrating so strongly that it rattled the shelves and knocked over a lamp. Through the small basement window, they saw flashes of light illuminating the backyard. Shadows moved erratically, too fluid to belong to humans. They're trying to get in, Mia whispered, her voice trembling. Ethan gripped the artifact firmly, his knuckles white. We have to hold them off long enough to figure out what this thing does. If they take it back, who knows what they'll do. Aisha stepped forward, her eyes locked on the glowing object. Maybe I can help. Let me try something. Before anyone could stop her, she placed her hands on the artifact, closing her eyes as if concentrating. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the pulsing light began to change. It shifted from a steady rhythm to a rapid, erratic pattern, matching the hum outside. The vibrations grew stronger, shaking the entire foundation of the house. "What are you doing?" Ethan shouted over the noise. "I don't know," Aisha replied, panic creeping into her voice. It's responding to me." Suddenly, a deafening crash echoed from upstairs. The front door had been breached. Heavy footsteps thudded against the floor above them, accompanied by an otherworldly clicking sound. The aliens were inside. "We need to move," Ethan yelled, grabbing Aisha's arm. "Now!" The trio bolted up the stairs, dodging debris as they made their way to the garage. Ethan punched in a code on the keypad, opening a hidden panel that revealed a sleek motorcycle equipped with advanced tech. "Get on," he ordered, revving the engine. Mia climbed on behind him while Aisha clutched the artifact tightly, still trying to make sense of its connection to her. As they sped out of the garage, the aliens appeared in the driveway, their glowing eyes fixed on the fleeing vehicle. One of them raised a hand and a beam of blue light shot toward them. Ethan swerved just in time, the blast narrowly missing them. "They're following us," Mia screamed, looking back. "Hold on," Ethan shouted, accelerating down the deserted road. The motorcycle roared as it pushed past its limits, weaving through the dark streets of Maplewood. Behind them, the aliens pursued relentlessly, their movements unnaturally fast. Aisha glanced at the artifact in her hands. Its glow had stabilized, and she suddenly felt a surge of clarity. "I think I understand now," she murmured. "This isn't just a weapon, it's a key, a signal." "To what?" Ethan asked, glancing at her briefly. "I'm not sure," Aisha admitted, "but I think we need to get it somewhere high, somewhere they won't expect." Ethan's eyes widened as realization dawned on him. The water tower. Without hesitation, he changed course, heading toward the outskirts of town. The old water tower stood tall against the night sky, its silhouette illuminated by the moonlight. Reaching it wouldn't be easy, not with the aliens hot on their trail, but it was their best chance. When they arrived, Ethan skidded to a stop, and the three of them scrambled up the ladder as quickly as they could. The climb was treacherous, especially with Aisha holding the artifact, but adrenaline kept them moving. Once they reached the top, Aisha positioned the object on the edge of the platform, her hands trembling as she adjusted its orientation. "What are you doing?" Mia asked, gripping the railing nervously. "Activating it," Aisha replied. "If my theory's right, this will send out a signal strong enough to disrupt their technology." Below them, the aliens converged at the base of the tower, their glowing forms eerily silent. One of them raised its hand again, aiming a beam of light directly at the group. Ethan shielded Aisha with his body, bracing for impact. But instead of striking them, the beam hit the artifact and everything changed. A blinding flash erupted from the object, sending shockwaves rippling outward. The aliens staggered backward, their bodies convulsing as the energy overwhelmed them. Within seconds, they collapsed, their forms dissolving into shimmering particles that vanished into the air. The trio stood frozen, staring at the spot where the aliens had been. Silence fell over the area, broken only by the gentle rustling of leaves in the breeze. Slowly, Aisha lowered her hands, her expression a mix of awe and exhaustion. "It worked," she whispered. Whatever that signal was, it neutralized them. Ethan exhaled deeply, running a hand through his hair. "For now, anyway. We don't know how long it'll last, or if more are coming." Mia wrapped an arm around Aisha's shoulders, pulling her close. "Well, whatever happens next, we'll face it together, right?" Aisha nodded, smiling weakly. "Right." As they climbed down from the water tower, the weight of what they'd accomplished settled over them. They had faced the unknown and survived, but they also knew this was far from over. The artifact remained in their possession, its secrets still largely untapped. And somewhere out there, Others, like the aliens, were waiting, watching. For Ethan, Aisha, and Mia, life would never be the same again. But in the midst of fear and uncertainty, they found strength in each other, a bond forged in the face of unimaginable danger. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they were ready to face them, together.